going to dive in at the deep end. Which is the more important problem for the global community to solve? Is it climate change or is it food security? Who thinks it's climate change? Who thinks it's food security? So I think it's slightly heavier towards climate change, because the problem is you can't have both. The environmental cost of agriculture, in particular synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, means that food security comes at a cost. So my name is Hughes. I'm the co-founder and CEO of NetZeroNitrogen, and we are working on that problem. NetZeroNitrogen exists to eliminate the 1 billion tons of CO2 equivalent every year that agriculture, primarily synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, contributes to greenhouse gases and global warming. And we're doing that by the development of a bioformulation that is a safe, natural, highly effective alternative to fertilizer. Now, nitrogen is ubiquitous in the air. It's like 70% of the air around us. It's the #1 limiting factor for crops and plants. So kind of what's the big deal? You know, it's everywhere. Well, the problem can be seen in our logo, actually, that in atmospheric nitrogen, the two atoms are bound by the triple bond, which is like very strong, stable, makes nitrogen inert. And so plants can't access that. Now, about 100 years ago, two German scientists, Haber and Bosch, they worked out a way of breaking this bond under high pressure, effectively using nitrogen from the air to make synthetic fertilizer. Problem solved. And that effectively now, that process feeds directly or indirectly about half of the world's population. So like I say, they've kind of cracked it, except it's expensive. Synthetic fertilizer is really expensive, and especially since the war in Ukraine. It uses about 1% of the world's fossil fuels. The production process is really energy intensive, and it only has about 30 or 50% efficacy. So you put it on the soil, the plant, whatever, only that much gets used. The rest goes into the water course as nitrate pollution or into the air as nitrous oxide. So this is a big problem. Nitrous oxide, if you're not familiar, basically makes CO2 like a bit of a health fad. So it's a long-term problem. What we're doing is, most of the emergent technologies are like fertilizer. You put them on the soil or the plant or something like that. We're developing a bioformulation that you apply directly to the seed. And the bacteria in it colonize the seed and the plant and live inside the plant and allow the plant to fix nitrogen directly from the air. So like super efficient. Rather than the price of fertilizer, this is a significant price difference. The volume is about 1/50th of that of fertilizer. So that's one of the reasons it's so cheap. And this is actually really important. If you talk to farmers about what would it take to change behavior, of course they care about the environment. They're custodians of the land. You talk to them about the price of fertilizer, they really get interested. Instead of using all that fossil fuel energy, it's using sucrose energy from the plant itself. Instead of 30% efficacy, effectively you've got 100% efficacy. You've got nitrogen on demand that's delivered when the plant needs it without any metabolic cost. Now, this is a really big market. The fertilizer market's forecast to get to 200 billion quite soon. Our first target market is rice for various reasons. And if you do even a fairly conservative penetration of the rice market, it's about 2.5 billion. And these figures are important because the market needs to be huge and the commercial potential needs to be big, because in order to deliver the environmental impact, you need to get investor interest and get the investment you need to really scale it. So it's important that you have impact and profit, because that's the only way you'll get the big money involved. Now, scale and execution offer their own challenges to us. If you can imagine a value chain that goes from the lab to the field, to fermentation, to product development, to actual distribution at the end of the day and farmers using it, we'd like to own as much of that as we can for IP protection, for quality control. But the very last bit, we're probably not going to own. In Thailand alone, there are about 4 million Thai rice farmers. Well, we see ourselves here more as Microsoft than Amazon. We're not going to have vans going at 4 million drives. However, what we'd like to do is have the central IP to own it, and then have a distribution partner in country that already has that distribution capability. And that's what will give us really fast scalability. Where are we now? So we've got 5 people, 3 scientists in the lab. We were funded last year by Undaunted, which is it's like the Centre for Climate Change Innovation at Imperial College. So they run an incubator. We went on their program. We just had a funding round. We closed that about 75% oversubscribed. Revent were our lead and biggest inventors. Zero Carbon Capital, who are here tonight, were the first investor on our cornerstone. And the dynamics on this changed. I spent 6 months going around with the begging bowl, getting filtered and triaged in big funds by 25-year-old MBAs. No offense to any 25-year-old MBAs in the audience. And then I was in Switzerland last week, and I had an Israeli VC basically said, "Is the round closed? Can I give you $500,000?" And I was like, "Oh my God, life has changed here." And then we've just had a grant from the Innovate UK for the Transforming Technologies bit. So it's all gone kind of quite well in the gravy strokes. It took a while to get there. And I've presented you with a very positive story, kind of I'm going to save the world, and it all sounds cool. I think it's interesting to calibrate this against some of the criteria. And I was looking at Stephen Schwartzman's book, the guy who founded BlackRock, about what it takes to found and grow a really successful business. The first thing was the idea needs to be huge. It needs to be big enough to devote the rest of your working life to. Well, I think I've made a pitch here that it's a big idea. You need to have a kind of aha moment. So there needs to be some uniqueness to it. And as I kind of mentioned, most of the other alternatives here, they're putting something on the soil or the plants. Nobody anywhere in the world has managed to exploit nature to replace synthetic nitrogen fertilizer at scale. So this is a kind of, genuine, unique selling point. And the last thing is there needs to be some timing. You need a bit of luck and you need some market forces. Well, we're at the center of this little trilemma or whatever you call it around biotech, ag tech, climate tech. They're all hot subjects at the moment. So that all plays quite well for us. And at some level, we have a dream here to have a 21st century impact on climate change that rivals the 20th century impact of Haber and Bosch on food security. Food security without the environmental cost. And that kind of seems a bit of a big deal. That we've got a few scientists working in a lab about 1 million miles from San Francisco or Boston and quite a lot of miles from London. And it often feels like a huge kind of too difficult, too big, too scary vision to take on. However, what we always return to, if it's not now, then when? And if it's not us, then who is it? Thank you.